What's up, y'all? I got you in my cupboard right now. You are literally where the cups go. So, I just finished, well, I didn't finish this book, The Story of the Human Body. As you can see, I'm about like a little bit more than halfway through. But I'm taking a break from it because it's super dense and it's just like, it's kind of like a biology textbook almost. It's a little bit more interesting than that, a little bit less. Some guy yesterday told me to get a haircut. You're just like, hey man, you should get a haircut, bro. I thought you were a girl. I was like, shit, no one's ever said that to me. But at the same time, I'm kind of digging the hair. Uh, I think, what the lesson I need to take from that is that like I need to do more interesting things to it so that it doesn't just look like this big, like blob thing on my head. It's ironic because we're talking about evolution. Why do we have hair? I guess it protects our head because our head's like a pretty important piece of our body. Okay, so The Story of the Human Body by Daniel Lieberman. I'm just gonna quickly go over it. Like I use I don't know if you can see that. I just like bracket stuff that I find interesting and stuff that I can go back and just kind of like get the general gist of the book. So he starts off by saying in the introduction that we're basically living in an environment that we're not evolutionary, um, or we're not suited for evolutionary wise. Like cities, modern cities, are not what we adapted to live in. We adapted to live in, the woods and the jungles and be eating nuts and fruits and every now and then eat some fish or some meat. But nowadays we just like we go to the grocery store, we get whatever we want basically. Um, Everything comes in like plastic, casings. Like the carrots I ate this morning, they came in like just a plastic bag. um, and we're not really fit to live in such urban modern environments. But we live there anyways, and we're healthier than ever. Um, some of us are happier than ever. Some of us, I think that technology has kind of brought out the anxieties in humans because it's a 24/7 world. Where I mean, the clock's just always ticking, and with smartphones and stuff, you're basically missing out on everything all the time. So in our minds get stressed out by that. They're not, and stress is the something that can literally kill you if you're stressed for year after year. It doesn't have a good impact on your cells, and it can cause cancer even. Stress, believe it or not, stress can cause cancer. When I learned that, I was very surprised. But then when I thought about it, it made sense. Like if you're living in a constant state of tension, how is your body really going to react to that? And he introduces that idea by talking about a monkey who escaped the zoo and was living in, I think it was New York, just like, oh wait, no, in suburban Florida, like living in a suburb in Florida, a monkey like lived, I think, for years. I'm pretty sure he says that this mystery monkey, he calls it, um, it happened in 2012, was just living in Florida and lived there for years in the suburbs. Escaping. He wasn't getting caught. No one could catch him, and he was just eating scraps. People from people's garbage and people's gardens and stuff. And he made a living for himself in an environment that he really didn't need to be. You know, um, there wasn't evolved to live in. He also talks about how the nation's gross domestic product is taken up a lot by healthcare, and modern healthcare doesn't really address the fundamental reasons for diseases like diabetes and stuff, but instead it just like hands people pills. He even says that. Uh, Actually, I'm reading Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. This is the book I'm reading currently while I'm taking a break from this, and I think I might start Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, because I finished The Hobbit like a couple weeks ago, and figured why not read the whole Lord of the Rings series, and then I also want to read the Game of Thrones series. at some point. Um, but yeah, so in this book, um, Stephen Pressfield just talks about how the medicine or the medical industry has literally invented some diseases in order to scare people into buying drugs. He mentions attention deficit disorder. Attention deficit disorder is it's more of a lack of will. You know, it's not you're not born with attention deficit disorder, and that's where technology comes in. I think having smartphones and computers and video games and stuff that definitely doesn't help our attention span. Things like Vine and Snapchat definitely don't help. Um, so, you know, just giving like kids Adderall is just it's not really getting to the root cause, which is we're just overstimulated. Um, so, anyways, he talks about natural selection, and he says natural selection is a remarkably simple process that is essentially the outcome of three common phenomena: variation, genetic heritability, and differential reproductive success. So, it's just constantly happening over millions of years. Well, this was an interesting one. He's talking about people who are overweight in today's society. He talks about how the universal tendency to crave rich foods like cake and cheeseburgers and store the excess calories as fat is maladaptive under today's conditions. But it must have been highly likely for hunters and gatherers in the past when food was scarcer and less calorific. So, um, you know, like we are evolved to crave fat, and because they build up they have a lot of calories, and they build up a lot of food storage. But that evolution, that adaptation, was for hunters and gatherers when food was pretty scarce compared to now, where you can just you can go to the grocery store, and for a few bucks you can buy something, like anything you want, really. Things in the grocery store, like you can spend a lot of money in the grocery store, but like individual things are pretty cheap. It's just because the reason we spend a lot of money at the grocery store is because we buy a lot of stuff. You get like a cart full of stuff, but everything in there is only like a few bucks for the most part. He also says having short legs is advantageous for conserving heat in cold climates, but disadvantageous for walking or running long distances efficiently. So there you can see like Eskimos versus Africans, and this goes back to natural selection and evolution. Eskimos are typically shorter people. They range between like 4 and 5 feet, and that's because they can conserve heat more because they live in cold climates. But Africans are typically tall and skinny, kind of lanky, and that's because they live in a hot climate, so they don't need to like hold in a lot of heat. They can be skinnier and taller. He says that worry, anxiety, and stress, we evolved to use those things to cope with danger. But he says we also evolved to cooperate, innovate, communicate, and nurture, cheat, steal, lie, and murder. Damn, man. Over all these years, talks about the Industrial Revolution and the Agricultural Revolution as huge events in human evolution. He says this over and over again, that cultural evolution is the strongest force now. It's more than biological evolution, because the way in which we live is changing so rapidly. Then the second part of the book, he talks about how we actually became humans. We started walking on 2 feet. That was like the biggest change, is like from chimpanzees to humans, we started walking on 2 feet. And the main thing that did was it freed our hands up. Before you had to like go on all fours, but it freed our hands up. So now we could use our hands to communicate, to like give signals. He also talks about how throwing with accuracy, like a chimpanzee, he throws on like this. He just like whips it up, and not very accurate that way. But human beings, we can go over the shoulder, over the head. We can really like we're accurate. We're super accurate. Look at Major League Baseball. Like those guys can throw. The MLB. So yeah, freeing up our hands, and then also walking with four legs takes way more energy than walking with two legs. So when we're walking with two legs, we conserve more energy so we can walk further. And this helped hunter-gatherers who would walk like 9 miles a day in search of food for like 6 hours. They'd just be walking, and or like running, and we could get from had more endurance in that sense, more stamina. And lastly, since a lot of the first humans started living on Africa, they started out in Africa. I guess because that's where the chimpanzees and gorillas and stuff were. That's where the apes were. It was super hot there, and when you're walking on all fours, right, you're kind of hunched over like this, right? You're leaning forward, so your whole back and your neck is all exposed to the sun, the heat rays of the sun. But when you're standing straight up, like a human being, like I am right now, if the sun's above you, which it is most of the time, I guess like in the early morning and in the evening, it's kind of like behind you or in front of you. But for most of the day, it's pretty much above you, and it just hits the top of your head and your shoulders for the most part. Like it hits your face a little bit, it might hit your legs, but everything takes less heat. It's not as exposed when you're walking on 2 feet, and that was another huge advantage for human beings and for walking on 2 legs. I'm going to try to speed through this because I just want to get as much out of this video as I can in terms of just like information in this book. My notes are so sporadic, they're just like I want to get better at taking notes so I can like go through these books more quickly. Oh yeah, he talks about fallback foods. Our teeth kind of developed to be stronger, especially when the Ice Age came around. But whenever there was like a lack of fruit, because fruit's really easy to bite into, right? You don't need like super sharp or strong teeth to bite into a fruit. But when drought started happening, especially in the Ice Age, when everything got really cold, we had to resort to what he calls fallback foods, which includes things like stems and seeds and nuts and what he calls underground storage organs, which is like the part of a fruit that's like beneath the ground and you have to like really dig it out. I mean, it probably didn't taste very good, but it had nutrients and energy in it. So gotta do what you gotta do, right, to survive. It's always crazy to me thinking about the first humans like figuring their shit out. It must have been like crazy life, man. Like, and you don't even know how to explain it because you're like on the cusp of being conscious, like smart enough to be conscious, but you still gotta survive. So you can't like sit around all day thinking about like what it means to be human. Like you gotta actually work your ass off. He talks about hunter-gatherers, which is really cool. Oh, there's this really cool part where he talks about let's see if I can find it. He talks about this thing called persistence hunting, I think. I think that's the name. Persistence hunting, I think it's called. And basically you just chase an animal, and like let's say I don't know, a boar. A boar might be able to run away from you, but if you keep chasing it, it's gonna get tired before you do, because first of all it might be able to go faster because it's 4-legged, but it's gonna get tired before you because it costs more energy to run with 4 legs than with 2. And that's where the stamina for humans comes in. We're one of the best long distance running species. Rather than panting like dogs do, we just sweat. And when the sweat evaporates off your skin, it cools the body. We also don't have fur because fur insulates the skin from getting air circulation. So a lot of our evolutions were to stay cool in Africa when we were evolving. And keep in mind, like, modern society has only been a thing really in the last like few hundreds of years. But for the last 6 million years, we've been evolving to live in Africa, like eating fruit. So we're not exactly doing or living in the environment that we were evolved to be living in. Oh, I like the sentence a lot. He says, although injuries like sprained ankles are problems today, they were potential death sentences on the savannah 2 million years ago. So, alright, this video is getting pretty long, so I think I covered a lot. Man, there's so much stuff in here I want to get to. It's a long video. Daniel Lieberman talks about how humans have relatively small guts and big brains compared to other species. And this makes sense because, you know, other mammals, they think with their guts more. We think with our minds and our brains more. That's why we're more conscious. But other animals, they're thinking just as much. They're just thinking with different organs. They're thinking with their stomachs. They're thinking like, where's my next meal going to come from? While us humans, we don't really have to worry about that much anymore. Or at least some of us. The lucky ones, I suppose. Oh, humans also cooperate effectively because we have good theories of mind, which means intuiting what another person is thinking. The ability to communicate through language, to the faculty to reason, and an ability to suppress one's urges. Yeah, because you can't cooperate very well if you're like a man who's super horny and is trying to like can only think about sex. That's actually something that I've been like struggling with lately is, trying to not like be prisoner to my sexual urges, but have mastery over them. It's kind of difficult. I think I'm figuring it out, but it's just an interesting part of growing up. Life is fundamentally a way of using energy to make more life. Wow. All organisms pass their days mostly getting energy from food and then spending that energy to grow, survive, and reproduce. Basically what he's saying there is the meaning of life is to just reproduce. Just use energy to create more life. Yep. Can all be boiled down to that. Alright, well I'm going to end it there. And that's just a little taste of this book that Daniel Lieberman is writing, or already wrote. And this is the book I'm on now. Of course, I will talk about this in another video. I'm really digging this book, actually, and it's a really quick read. I think I'm more than half finished with this one. And I just started, like, today. So, a lot of really good stuff in this book. Okay, see y'all tomorrow.